Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Democratic View. I'm the hostess. My name is Phyllis Italiano, and with me today I have two prominent members of our Springs community, and they are Carole Campolo and Deb Foster, and we are going to talk a little bit about something that we read in the Star about our school and the needs of our school. And so we're going to start, Carole, with you, and you're going to tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, thank you for having me today, Phyllis. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, originally, Flatbush, Brooklyn, and I went to Erasmus Hall. We Brooklynites covet that school because it was so terrific.
Yes,
gave us a great education. And then my husband and I moved to East Hampton as a second homeowners in 1991, and we are here full-time since 2007.
And what did you do for a living? This is very important.
I worked in the city of New York for 30 years and did all sorts of things. I was a staff member of the New York State Financial Control Board, budgeting, and I did city construction and design for a while. And then for 20 years I did campaign finance reform, and we produced the first ever New York City voter guide that went to 3 million people twice, and is still being produced.
So one of your terrific assets to our community is that you understand things like contracts.
Yes, I understand the contracting process and contracts, construction and design contracts, yes.
And with me I had a former council person, I might add, Deb Foster. Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I grew up in upstate New York in a place called Salamanca, located wholly on an Indian reservation on either side of the Allegheny River. I attended school at Boston University, got my master's in education, and my entire adult life I have been teaching at Spring School. It's like my second family. It's a wonderful community. I've taught generations now. Decided to retire when a kindergarten kid came up to me and said, "You taught my grandmother." And then I did get into politics, and I was elected to the town board in 2004 and served a term.
And by the way, you worked on the comprehensive plan, if I'm not mistaken.
Definitely.
Yeah.
In the first one in the 80s, and then the latest one in 2005. I'm very concerned that we keep this beautiful place beautiful.
Are you kidding? That's my mission in life.
There you go. Mine too.
And Deb, what did you teach when you were at school?
I taught all the grades, which is wonderful. Physical education and health.
Oh, great.
My backgrounds.
Great.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So what we wanted to discuss is that the fact that we do know that we have at the Springs School a school that has many, many children, and perhaps too many to actually fit into that building. And one of the things we were all interested in and worked on was the acquisition, hopefully we had wanted, of CDCH, which is a school located, which I just passed on my way here, that is now closed. And that was something that we all had gotten very excited about. Would have been perfect. It is a school and already designed for a school. There was a bit of a kind of clinker into the plan because New York State has certain rules about where students can go. You can only go to a school. It's almost funny. That is, the land is contiguous to what that means, I have no idea, and why they have that, I have no idea. But we all felt that it should have been pursued a little bit more heavily than it was, because it would have been perfect for us. We have a school board that is not interested in doing that, and I'm going to let you ladies talk about. Now, you served on this committee called the Facilities Committee. Would you like to tell us a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, the school board in 2015 started a facilities, created a facilities committee that included members of the community, parents and teachers, as well as a school board member. And the facilities committee was to look at the issues regarding a possible expansion for the spring school, as well as some of the repairs that, and they're needed repairs that need to be done to that school. They need new windows, they need their systems to be upgraded, they need ADA compliant, I think in areas where they are not ADA compliant, they need to upgrade it to ADA compliancy.
ADA means what?
I'm so sorry. It's the American with Disabilities Act, and the goal of that, signed many years ago, and I believe George H.W. Bush signed it, was to make accessible public buildings and schools, and to people that had disabilities, and that make things compliant, that wheelchairs could fit into bathrooms and in hallways and in classrooms and in other public areas. So the school definitely needs to have some repairs made to it. The question that we have is whether or not an expansion or an addition to the school needs to be quite as grandiose as it appears the architect that has been hired would like to see the school. I think there is a design, there are a number of preliminary designs out there, and one of the designs, and Ms. Sampson notes it in her article in the East Hampton Star, of 16 additional classrooms and a gymnasium. There are other additions as well, but that seems to be a bit overblown. We thought so as a facilities committee, and we met several times last summer, and the committee was disbanded by the school board in last fall, and they are proceeding with their contracting process and the expansion of the school. As I understand it, the Springs community will be offered a design concept probably at the beginning of the year, January 1st, with the thought that there would be a bond referendum that the voters would have to vote on in mid-March.
And what is the estimated cost of the new 16 classrooms?
Oh, the 16 classrooms is hard to tell, but last summer we were dealing with numbers of about $15 to $20 million. Recent contract documents, the construction manager contract that has been signed by the school board, does have his fees being based upon construction costs as high as $35 million. So that was a bit of a shock to me when I saw and heard that number. That does not mean that that's what the design and the addition will end up as, but it is in an official document for the construction manager, and I think that is something that all Springs residents need to pay careful attention to, is the burgeoning cost potentially of this project.
This is essentially why we are here, is this school board, elected by our taxpayers, our residents in Springs, homeowners, seems to have a deaf ear as to the balance between meeting the important educational needs of our children and what the financial challenge is to a community that has the largest number of small lots and small homes, essentially a working class community. We pay 6 times higher the rate in taxes than our other hamlets that are along the ocean. We also have the highest number of senior citizens on a retired income. We have the highest number of single heads of households that must work and somehow find childcare. And yet 72%, we also have the most number of children per area. 72% of our tax bill for our small residential community goes to the school. I get kind of choked up about this because this is my home. My whole adult life has been here. They have, our taxpayers, and consistently voted through budgets that are 72% of their taxes, their property taxes. They take pride in the school. We take pride in the fact that our children do a good job up at the high school. Since about the past 5 years when I started to get involved, maybe 2 or 3 years, the school board has hired a superintendent full-time, which I'm not convinced we need a full-time superintendent for one building, who gets $2,000 a day. But let's not work him too hard for that. He has approximately 84 days off. So what was happening is he would take Fridays off. He wouldn't even be in the building. That's $2,000 we're still paying him. This is a small community. He's from Huntington, retired there, getting his retirement there. This is a small community on the north side of the Hamptons. And I don't care if you had the head of the Department of Education working for us. It's simply too much money. That was the first click. 2, we have a problem with parking. We are growing. And that's an unsafe issue because a lot of it's going on in the front of the school and constrained School Street. So the board responded with a proposal to have a parking lot that would cost $2.5 million. A parking lot. It's the first time I remember since I've been there for 40 years that they've ever voted down a request. Third thing, there was a recent election. The incumbent was beaten by 60%. Now, we're sending a message as a community. I want to see those kids be in a safe environment. It's an expanding population. They should get the best education they can, but the school board is like LaGuardia about what we can afford. My fear is this, you're right. Short term, right now, we need some more classrooms. Yeah. I think it was recommended 3 to 6. We need, just for safety, and also for energy efficiency, new windows. And we do need a parking lot. It doesn't have to be paved. It could be natural surface.
We also need a new septic system.
A new septic system that's going, into Pussy's Pond and polluting water.
As an administrator in elementary school, I know how many times those kids are using the bathroom.
That's right.
And let me tell you something.
There's an odor.
A lot of flushing going on there.
I was out on playground duty. I'm telling you, in the warm weather, there's an odor. So I think anyone in Springs would agree we have to attend to that building. But you can't be asking for new gyms and an expansive library. And they haven't made the case that we need 16 classrooms, especially because the facilities committee that Carole was on with teachers and parents and members of the community just wanted the basics. They didn't even discuss that publicly. They went with this Up Island architect, and that's another story where it might not even be legal the way he was hired. And the result is, in March, we could be asking our residents and taxpayers to pay for a project that could be $35 million. That's approximately an extra $400 a year beyond what we're paying now in taxes.
Oh, wow. That is my point of view. My point of view is I know many people who live in our Springs, and I love Springs, by the way. I chose it. Yep. I had the choice. I could have gone anywhere from Watermill on because I had people in my family who were willing to help me to buy a house. But I turned the corner on Springs on my street, and I saw kids playing. And, I've been around kids all my life. I love kids playing in this street. I thought, this is where I want to be. This is where I really want to be. And I wanted to be close to the bay. I'm a swimmer. Love my bay. I like the little look of this hamlet,
Beautiful.
It is. It's a lovely, lovely area. And I know that there are people who are going to be pushed out of their homes by this kind of thing. Now, folks, when they float a bond means that eventually you'll have to pay for it. It will come back to each of us, and we will be shelling out. And a lot of people are not going to be able to afford that.
So what does that mean? That means it hurts our children. And this is where my heart goes pitter-pat. I am urging, and I hope the rest of the community urges the school board, and I know they're working on it now, to come down closer to what the local facilities committee felt we needed, and to discard this grandiose plan that I'm afraid will just not be passed. Then what do we do for another few years? I mean, these are emergency items. It is overcrowded now. And the reason I don't necessarily trust that'll happen is that the architectural firm and the engineering firm get 5% of whatever the final cost would be. Now, we're no dummies out here in Bonnet. You think they're going to want to cut back what they have put forward? But we're asking our school board to take a hard look at this, or it's going to be we're all going to lose.
You know, it's really amazing. I've been watching occasionally, filmed on LTV is the Sag Harbor Board of Education. And if you watch them, people get up and they talk and they talk and they talk. When you get up to want to talk in Springs at the Board of Education, you got 3 minutes. 3 minutes. And you can't get up again. So, I mean, there's something that's going on there that this school board is seeking a great deal of control over everything that is going on. And it's not going to be for the benefit of either the students, the teachers, or the community.
Amen.
And
That's why we're here.
I mean, I'm a teacher and an administrator. I taught for many years, and I know how hard they work. You know, I know that when my daughter, when I go and see her, all I see is the top of her head. She's now teaching again in English. Stupidest thing to ever teach anyway. And she's, you know, I see the top of her head while she's grading. You know, I mean, it's hard work. And when they say you got your summers off, don't kid yourself. I was always taking classes. I have 145 hours past my 2 master's degrees, you know, because we were always there was always something you wanted to learn, you wanted to know more about, to be that kind of teacher. And I know that the teachers there do a very good job.
Excellent job.
You know, and the kids are you know, working and doing the best that they can. We have a very large ESL population.
Yes.
More than 50%, and that's a difficulty. Having been an
seen the
administrator
changes.
at a public school that was bilingual, I know what this is, how difficult this can be, but it's not insurmountable. You can do it, and good planning and good supervision and good administration is very important in this kind of thing. What is not necessary is to expand a building, you know. So go ahead, Big.
Anything you want to add?
Well, the thing that troubles me is that the school board, it appears the school board has very little regard for the taxpayer. And as we've noted, that the taxes are going to go up regardless what ends up as the final construction project. Taxes will be going up. But the question is it something that is manageable for the average homeowner? And what I don't think a lot of people, and perhaps the school board doesn't know this, there are people struggling in Springs today. I mean, I've gone into homes where there are dirt floors. There are older people, and they tend to be our older people who nobody sees, and they are struggling right now. And $200 to $300 or $400 as the depending upon the assessed value, the additional tax amount will be for a home is a lot of money. And I just hope that the school board just remembers who their constituents are, not only the teachers and the students, obviously, but the taxpayers. And they really need to take a hard look at what they are asking the taxpayers to fund.
I was going to add 2 things, because I'm a let's get it done kind of person. So I'm going to get right to the bottom line that we have been putting out there. The superintendent only working about 30%, working about 70% of the year.
At his movie star salary?
Yeah. Has said he will leave at the end of December. He has now announced, or the school board has urged him to stay, to see through if the community adopts the referendum, to see through this building of appears to be very grandiose ideas from the architect who he has connections with up island.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
I'm a bottom line kind of person. This doesn't sit well with me. I think that's one of the problems. And I would encourage him to go by what he has announced to leave so that we do not have this tail wagging the dog of our community of a firm that was hired the year before without a resolution, which is illegal, that came up with what the needs were, then was allowed to bid on it against other firms. Does that smell just a little weird to you? If we did that on the town board, it would be totally irresponsible of our fiduciary responsibility. Talk about getting the inside. And he is hanging on now, and the school board is going along with it to see that this more grandiose plan is put in. And the other thing that's a little frightening, and you know this, you've done your homework, is in a couple of years, it's projected that our population is going down. So by the time we put, if it gets passed, this grandiose expansion in, we might not even need it.
Yes.
It doesn't pass the smell test for me.
Yes, I'm glad you also brought that up because BOCES, which means Board of Cooperative Education Services, in case people don't know, has predicted that, as this area becomes more a second home ownership type of community, that people will be buying homes without children,
Right. I mean, the troubling thing also to me is not only the what I looked at as the contracting procedure that the school board and the superintendent used, which was very questionable, but the school has a problem today, and the school's going to have a problem tomorrow, and there appears to be not quite enough attention being paid to how do we solve the problem today. Instead, we're talking about a construction job that is unlikely to be finished before 2021 or 2022, given all of the requirements, all of the various approval processes, giving all of the vagaries of construction in New York and New York State. There's such a thing called the Wicks Law, which really makes the cost of construction go up, and it takes more time to do just standardized construction that you would have anyplace else. So you're looking at 21, 22, and the BOCES report shows a clear decline in student population by 2025. And this push for a project that's not going to be done until 2021 or 22, while the kids right now need relief, it's very troubling. And there's no solution right now. They've spent all their time on this contracting process and haven't come up with a solution for tomorrow.
So what has the Facilities Committee actually suggested? One of the things
This is a solution.
I believe the Facilities Committee, we talked about modular or temporary buildings being done, and we suggested that last year. It was also suggested to the school board by two members of the Facility Committee last fall. When we suggested it and discussed it at our facilities meeting, the architect said it would take nearly as long to build those temporary facilities and nearly as much money to put them into place. And it just never made sense to us. So everything got sort of moved to the final fix.
Well, he's an architect. You know what he wants to
Exactly,
do. He wants
exactly.
to build, you
And-
know.
and-
He wants to submit plans and build the grandiose building.
Yeah. But we believe, and members of the facility committee do believe, some members, I should say, do believe that had they taken the advice of the facilities committee, they'd certainly be a lot further along today than they are, and they wouldn't have an article that you referenced in the beginning of this show talking about the severe overcrowding problem today. I mean, it may not have been 100% cured by today, but they certainly would have been a lot further along.
That this is an option. To take a hard look at the Facilities Committee recommendations as a phase one, if you will. It would take less money, much less time. Modulars these days, you can't tell the difference between them and a regular, classrooms come in modulars.
Yes, we see modular houses going up.
Exactly. And the way the school is laid out, I'm not an architect, but was there 34 years of my life, you can always add on to the 5 or 6 classrooms that would be needed. And again, there are safety issues and things that need to be repaired now. If they would put before us a phase one and then see after a few years if our population's expanding, do a phase two, I think they'd have the support of the community.
Okay, folks, are you all listening? Because this is something that's very important, and we're hoping that you see another point of view, which is of two people who are part of the school community
Yes.
and also part of the committee that worked on this sort of thing. We're looking forward to seeing the community understand a little bit more rather than just this one-sided article that appeared in the Star on the front page last week. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
It was
Thanks.
my pleasure to have to meet my
was a
old
pleasure.
friends here.
It was good.
Thank you.
All right, well.